It's me, Zenobia Darling. You're listening to hashtag Rockstar Life, the Coffee Break podcast. Let's go. Where the hell's my cold brew at? Oh, what's up, guys? It is me, Zenobia Darling. I have beamed down in, where are we at? Boston? Outside of Boston? Massachusetts?
Yeah, an hour west of Boston.
Okay, I beamed down outside of Boston in Massachusetts with Alisa Kleckner of Scared of My Shadow, an amazing costumer, artist, featured in the Paranormal Realm Beyond the Lore, my art exhibition at CCBC in Essex. So, how are you today?
I am fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm good. This retrograde, like we were just talking a minute ago, has already started. So it's been technical issues, but it happens when you're beaming down from a UFO. So I guess Mercury retrogrades still happen in space.
I mean, space, it makes sense, right?
Oh, yeah. But, I'm an alien, so I can have magic to make it work. So let's get into this. Because we featured one of your costumes in the paranormal realm. It was I believe it was the voodoo doll, or the all dolled up and the sticker and the ticker on our I can't even talk today, on our mannequin Wendy, who like all the students were loving. Everyone loved serving high drag, high theater, high costume art. And then we had two masks of yours. So we had the jackalope and the Stark Raving Mad one. I love the jackalope. I actually wore it when we were installing it and took a picture with it. And it's just like, it's so good. What inspired you to make these costumes?
So I guess let's kind of go back to the beginning, right?
Okay.
So leather itself is something that as a child of the 80s, I had, the leather bomber jacket, like was all the thing, all the rage, right? And so, me and my high school friends would hang out and, have these deep conversations. And one of those friends had this leather bomber jacket. And so I have this sense memory of leather and deep conversations and feeling like we're important. Come on, high school conversations.
Was it a members only jacket?
It was not a member. Now I had another friend with a members only.
Okay.
This was just like your standard, like Wilson's leather.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Wilson's leather bomber jacket, and we would be in central Pennsylvania in the middle of the woods, maybe cracking a couple of beers.
It happens.
Surrounded by snowbanks, right? But in the car, having these deep conversations, with the smell of leather, and then someone of course was smoking cigarettes, and
there is nothing sexier than cigarettes and leather. Like when I smell that on a man, right? I'm like, yes, like it's one of those things. I'm like, I love that scent.
So that aspect of the material itself has always resonated with me, right? And so my very first costume design years later, I'm like, I'm going to incorporate leather in it. This is going to be great. It was a disaster because I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Leather is one of those things you need to know a lot about before you start working in it. And in a way that doesn't absolutely destroy your machines, your hands, like all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
It's not like a normal fabric you get at Joann's. Like it's like you have to have heavy duty stuff. So I know I've destroyed a sewing machine trying to sew leather before. So it happens.
So I wasn't where I needed to be to do that, right? So years later, I end up taking a workshop at a Tandy Leather, a belt making class of all things. I'm like, okay, I know everything there is to know about leather now. And so I'm going to start making these leather masks. And so for me, just working in the material itself feels so true to who I am as a person. And it feels loaded. You know what I mean? It feels like emotionally connected to who I am as a human being, as an armchair philosopher, whatever. It speaks to me, and I speak through it in a way that connects me to like my darker side that I always had and fought against for a really long time. I'm sure we're probably going to end up talking about
Oh,
that a little bit later.
oh yes, I got
Yeah, right,
questions.
right.
I understand it too. So,
So, right, and so then I found my way back to leather, and what immediately kind of came out of it were these kind of darker, creepier, primal, uncanny sort of characters, and so within that though is I really do my best. So I do sell a lot of my work to like the haunted attraction industry and to entertainment and things, but I really do my best to create work that I like and speaks to me. And so, for instance, the jackalope, I designed the jackalope and built the jackalope for me, not expecting anybody else to like it at all. Right.
oh really? It's my personal favorite. Like I love it.
Well, it ended up becoming a lot of people's favorite, which is really interesting to me because it's not what I expected, right? I was like, well, I've always loved rabbits. Watership Down, like that was my book that I read 1,000 times when I was younger. And then, of course, as far as cryptids are concerned, put antlers on that bitch, and I'm good to go. Ooh, I
Oh
don't know if
yeah.
I should.
No, you
Can I
can cut.
swear?
Trust me. Oh, I'm a drag queen. I always say like I have a tapestry of obscenity over Chesapeake Bay, specifically for me. So if you got to cuss, feel free. You're not offending any of
Okay,
my
right
little
on, right
darlings.
on. Okay. So yeah, so like if I was to have like an ensouled animal like kind of attached to me as a person, like it was always the jackalope, it's just completely based in, medical anomaly, which is already something that really interests me, and also like steeped in all kinds of legend and lore. So, I really wanted to create work that resonated in the uncanny, in the primal, in with a legacy material, right? Leather's a legacy material. It can last for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And then for me, like its mere scent has this, it brings me to a place where I feel very grounded, very connected with my deep love of friends and my deep love of history.
Yeah.
So that absolutely, that's kind of where that all resonates
I
from,
love
as
that.
far as, yeah, why I do the work I do, and the themes I tend to land in.
Yeah, because with leather, I always say like in indigenous cultures when they would, kill an animal for food, they would use every part of the animal, including the leather. And I almost feel like it gets back into that because there was a huge indigenous theme that came out of the paranormal realm. And I feel like this kind of goes into it where it's like we're using that, and also we're playing around with folklore. And you said something about that it explores like this darker side of you that you've kind of always been afraid of. I actually quoted from the website. You said, I didn't grow up loving horror movies. I was downright heebie-jeebie by all things killer. So like when with this creative play, you said it brought out that darkness, but it brought it out in like a fun way and like a creative way, which is where I feel like the darkness needs to come at. So I don't know. That's a good quote too. I was laughing. I love it.
Oh, thank you. And it's 100% true. So like we don't always realize how deeply ingratiated fear is. I mean, I think we do now.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah.
yeah, Anyway, side note. So I had a lot of baked in fear, and part of that was growing up and living in a notoriously haunted house, which I'm sure we'll get to that
Oh
as
yeah, I
well.
have that. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we're
Oh,
gonna get to some stuff, but it was also the fact that I had such a vivid imagination, and so I would, if I watched something scary, like it really stuck with me. And then it would play in my dreams, and then my dreams would be very realistic. And there was always a little disconnect about like what's reality and what was dream. And I am definitely, I admittedly, I'm one of those people. If I dream something and it seems like it happened, I do carry it the next day, and I'm like, oh, you are such a dick to me. Why were you such a dick to me? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh shit, that was a dream. That's right. No, so when I have these
been there,
dreams,
done
right,
that.
I definitely, right. So I land in these places where it has a true sense of reality for me. And so I was always a little afraid of well, I was a lot afraid. I had a lot of things kind of baked in fear wise, and it was only through okay, let me back up. So it was baked in, but as a kid, I hadn't found three-dimensional stuff yet. So I was doing a lot of drawing, but I was drawing all kinds of like bones and kind of creepier stuff. And I would love to replicate like my boyfriend's like metal album covers, which are all
Oh,
kind of
yes.
dark. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'd be drawing those
Ugh,
for,
those
for
like
my
80s
friends and my
album
boyfriend.
covers are so like if you see I have a Hades shirt on, but it's Hades from Disney, but he's like a metal band like cover. It's like that is my aesthetic completely. I love it.
Hell yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So like so I was I was raised kind of drawing like all this kind of creepy stuff, but I didn't collect anything like that. Like that wasn't a part of my life at all. And it was, and I always was interested in Ouija boards and like the creepier stuff,
oh, the
but
best.
it was this small group of us that was into that. But then then you'd go home and you'd completely separate yourself from it, right? It wasn't part of your aesthetic. Like it's not like now where there's all these cottage core and gothic core and like all that
Hmm.
kind of stuff, right? It was very, very separated. And so I had a tendency toward these things, but I was unwilling to really let it become part of my personality, right? I fought it. I fought it. I fought it. I fought it. And it wasn't until, oh geez, 2000s, I think early 2000s, where I was asked to do some design work for a haunted attraction. And at this point, I hated haunted attractions,
Yeah.
like hated them.
I'm the same way. I
And so,
hate them. Don't touch me. Don't scare me. Like I will punch back. I will. Yeah. Like not my thing. Even to
oh,
this day.
well, now I'm different from that. But so I would, I couldn't do them. I would cry. It
Mhm.
terrified me so badly. And so to get to the studio space where I was sculpting this life-size decaying horse, because as you do, I would have I would have to walk through the haunt. So I'd walk through with my hands on either side of my head as blinders, so that I didn't have to look at that stuff because I was convinced, of course, it's going to move. Like
Mhm.
yeah, uncanniness always scared me. Something a static form is absolutely going to move when you're walking by. Well, I eventually started to look, and I'm like, oh wait, this is like the anatomical stuff that I really like to draw, and this is like this other creepy stuff. And actually, like, look at the color theory behind that, and look at the
Oh yeah.
design aspect, and and so I started like leaning into it as a person who was artistically inclined, not studying art, but artistically inclined. So I didn't really even quite have the vernacular for it yet. I had started that vernacular. And then it became kind of beautiful to me. And so then I'm like, okay, I got to get over this fear of zombies. So
Yeah.
then I started watching like a ton of zombie movies. And then I'm like, I got to get over this fear of haunted attractions. I'm going to go through it a whole bunch of times. And so through kind of the acceptance of what I actually liked to see, but was afraid of, like something baked that freaking fear into me. I learned to release that, and now I can't get enough.
Yeah.
Like it's I I'm okay being a little spooky dooky. Like I don't care about, you know, surrounding myself with lots of skeletons and bones and folklore and
Ouija
studying
boards and
folklore,
all that.
witchcraft
Yes.
and Ouija boards and all of this kind of thing. Like, no, I like enchantment in my life.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
like looking at the uncanny. I like existing in the liminal. I don't want to be in a box.
I hear that.
I
I identify with this so much because I feel like before I had Zenobia, I was like in my late teens and high school, I was definitely very like Abercrombie preppy and like the darkness was there because I was like also a goth kid. but that was going away. And then it's like, I had the same awakening that you had where I'm like, no, I want to be around haunted stuff. I want to be witchy. I want to be spooky. I want it. And now, like, you know, years later, I'm like, well, I should have just did this years ago. But it's like through that awakening and that creative play is how like I really found my love of this stuff and how that magic that exists in the paranormal and all that stuff. There's a true genius and a true enchantment to it that and there's a campiness. It might be scary and dark, but it's fun and it's comforting. Like the whole art exhibition, at first it looks dark, but when you get into it, it's fun, it's campy, it's playful. It's not like what people expect. And it's like, that's the side of the paranormal, like Elvira, that I love.
Well, and I think it's really important too. If we all take this stuff so seriously, it also doesn't leave any room for something to exist outside your worldview.
Yeah.
Right. It's through that play. It's through that openness. It's through that acceptance that something can be equally horrifying and funny at the same time. Like, we need to make room for that in our lives, I believe, at least, because that's what keeps us learning and playing.
Yeah.
And if we don't play, what's the freaking point?
I know. If you're not having fun, it's like, what's the point of living if you're not having fun? It's like, have fun, laugh, you know, take the dark stuff, laugh at it, make fun of it, make it beautiful, enjoy it. So I love it. This is amazing. All right, ad break. I gotta pay for all this damn coffee I'm drinking and tea I'm spilling. What's up, art lovers? It's me, Zenobia Darling. Did you know I'm more than just a drag rock star? I'm also a very accomplished painter, photographer, and you can check it all out on ZenobiaDarlingCreative.com. Sponsored by the Harford County Cultural Arts Board, my blog, #RockstarLife, the arts blog. It explores all my creativity right when it crashes into local culture. Explore my neo-expressionistic fine art, my editorialized goth photography. And this is the best part. You can buy my original paintings and you can spruce up your boring-ass walls because every wall needs some glittering Zenobia Darling on them. So go check out Zenobia Darling Creative. The link is in the episode description. Ooh, what's up, Glamazons? It's Zenobia Darling. And you know my rock stardust doesn't just happen, right? It's crafted to perfection at Odyssey Salon and Day Spa in Aberdeen. Let me spill my secret. Abby, my badass stylist, is the mastermind behind my iconic glittering blonde mohawk. Whether you want to spike it up, smooth it out, dye it a killer shade, or just add that extra edge to your hair, the crew at Odyssey have the magic to make you feel like the superstar you truly are. And it's not just about hair. They keep my nails sharp, my skin polished, and every visit is an absolute blast. And here's the best part, my darlings. Odyssey isn't just about looking fierce. It is a safe space where us LGBT folks can feel right at home, shining as our truest selves. So if you're ready to live your own #rockstar life and embrace your creative spirit, get yourself to Odyssey Salon and Day Spa in Aberdeen. Tell them Zenobia sent you and show the world how fabulous us rock stars look. And you never know, you might run into yours truly. The link to book your visit to unlock your fabulosity is in the episode description. Hey there, ghost-loving rebels. It's Zenobia Darling, your paranormal punk rock queen. We premiered my newest art film, Ethereal Anarchy, Zenobia Darling's Haunted Revolution, on November 1st with my opening reception of my immersive art exhibition, The Paranormal Realm Beyond the Lore. Let me tell you, part one of this film captured one of the most profound paranormal experiences I've ever had. And it was met with roaring applause and accolades. And yes, we filmed it in true punk rock fashion to bring you even more content. But Huns, the revolution is just getting started, and we need you to bring part 2 to life. We have so much more content from part 1 that we want to include, plus we're actively filming for part 2. So we're pushing paranormal storytelling to the edge in true aspirational punk rock fashion. Your support fuels every haunting moment of this journey. From ghost hunting gear to fair crew pay, every dollar you contribute keeps things spooky and queer just the way it should be. Join the Haunted Revolution. You can find the link to our GoFundMe in the episode description and help us raise the dead and the funds. So let's go back to, you said you grew up in a haunted house and you said you grew up in central Pennsylvania. So can we go back to, and do you have any like stories? Do you have any paranormal experiences in that house that now are integrated into your work?
I think, here's the thing is whether I don't know that it's directly integrated into my work. except that it's absolutely deeply integrated into who I am as a human being, which I can't separate from my work, right? Because I do try to make work that speaks to me and that I enjoy making and that I'm not just making for commercial purposes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I can really separate it. But I absolutely had some interesting experiences. Um, and some are secondhand. But so the house itself was in this small town, and I'm talking small, like mile long
Oh
town
man.
in the middle of farm country, like and we lived in the downtown.
Which is like the row of homes on one street. I know how that is.
Exactly. Exactly. So we lived in the downtown, and our house was built in the 1790s.
Oh,
And
so
so
you
it's this
got
beautiful.
history there. Oh man.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Old, 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 old house. And so, we moved in. It was an elementary school. And, the neighborhood kids, of course, right out of the gate, ah ha ha, neener, 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 you live in the haunted
Of
house.
course.
Of course, they're gonna do that. And, so my sister and I certainly would see lights that kind of move through space and don't refract around corners. And we had an old electric typewriter that would type,
Oh
but you
man,
can't
poltergeist
I
stuff.
know, I know, but don't get
Yes.
too excited. Don't get too excited because, like, all right, so the keys don't depress unless it is plugged in, but they would depress, which is sort of that was the
Whoa.
weird part. So we put paper in and tried. We didn't get any messages. That was a little bit of a heartbreak. No
Yeah, that
messages
that would make me
there.
mad. Yeah. But that's the paranormal though. They control it. You have no control over it and they do what they want.
Exactly, exactly. So, that kind of stuff would happen all the time. And so it was living in this house that when my parents got divorced. My parents got divorced in the 70s, which was really an odd thing anyway. So speaking of like kind of a weird confluence of like things happening, so there was lots of energy in that space. And I mention that because that'll come up that will segue into a story that will follow shortly.
Okay.
So so just little weird things are happening in the house, but nothing that like strikes me to the point of like absolute complete fear, but I was definitely scared. And so, so I was a latchkey kid. And so for anybody who doesn't know what a latchkey kid is, it was very much a product of the time where your parents would leave the house before you did, the kids would leave to go to school, they would often get home before their parents. So you were basically in charge of yourself a lot. And so I was a latchkey kid, and I was the last one who would leave the house in the morning to go to school. So I'm in third grade, just for a sense of perspective. And I am in my bedroom, and the layout of this space is there's my bedroom. So let's talk about it in terms of a clock. That'll probably help kind
Mm.
of with the layout. So if my bedroom is at 9 o'clock, my parents' room is at 3 o'clock, and the attic door is at noon.
Oh
And
boy.
of
Of
course
course it is.
is what of course it is, and is of course one of these attics where you go up the stairs, you're eye level with the floor,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're in the giant attic space, right? So I'm brushing my hair facing 12 o'clock, right? So I'm in the bedroom, I'm facing the wall. The door to my room is to my right, and I hear walking in the attic. And then I
Oof.
hear
Oof.
descending steps. And at this point, to like also put this in perspective, I had a Siamese cat who was terrified of strangers.
Oh goodness.
And
Oh.
Kish was walking out the door. As the attic door opens, she freezes. I freaking freeze.
Oof.
The door closes. The steps recede back up the stairs, and Miso, as if I'm sorry, that's my current Siamese. Sorry, Kish, as if flipping a switch, starts moving and continuing to walk.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how long I was frozen in time.
But
as soon as
that would freak me out. I have to say that would, yeah.
Right? So Kish did not run. She just stopped. And whatever that was saw it, right? So I throw down my hairbrush eventually. I pick up my backpack and I run out of the house. So I'm at school, and all day long, I am obviously completely distracted by this because I'm a latchkey kid and I am the first one home.
Oh,
and the last place I want to be is home.
So you were like aware that you had a paranormal experience. Like you were aware of it.
Well, I don't. Yes and no.
Okay.
All right. So my body was absolutely because, like, I mean, your body responds to things. Will tell you a lot more than your brain sometimes is willing to do. So I run out of I'm out of the house. I'm in school. I can't concentrate on my studies. So I am writing a letter. I'm writing a letter to That's Incredible about my experience. So imagine this third grader penning this letter to a TV show about her paranormal experience, right? Whew. So I'm like, this is how I'm processing this right now. So it's time to go home from school. And thankfully, one of my good friends was like, just come to my house. So this is before cell phones and all that kind of stuff, right? And it doesn't matter. I don't have my parents. And at this point, actually, my parents were divorced. So it was my mom. I didn't have my mom's work number.
So you couldn't shoot a text to her and be like, hey, this happened.
Nope. So this girl decides that she's not coming home till 5 o'clock when she knows for a fact that everybody's going to be coming home. Doesn't my mom come home a little early? And I got in so much trouble, right? Because, like, where the hell were you? Understandable, right? So I explained to her what happened. And she's like, there was a repairman in the attic. And I'm like, okay. So I accept this to be true.
There's a repair. Oh, man.
Except it wasn't until like a couple years later, like middle school, and I'm telling somebody a story about this, and they're like, there was no repairman in your attic. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, we know your mom. There's no way, that she would let anybody in that house alone when she's not there.
Yeah.
Let alone alone with her daughter.
Yeah.
Let alone the fact that I never heard anybody go into the attic. Everything came from the attic and went back up into the attic.
And like you would know if someone was in your house. Like you would full on know if there was a person in your house. Like your mom would have said something or you would have ran into that person because I'm sure you were getting ready for school or yeah.
So that was her quick kind of cover for that. So the reason I kind of say that is, so my parents, when they were together, made a concerted effort to kind of cover, anything that we kind of said. They were like, oh no, it's just blah, blah, blah. They would come up with a reason so we wouldn't be afraid.
A little white lie. I'm very familiar with that.
Because, the neighborhood kid is saying, ha, 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 your dad saw a ghost in your house. And then me asking dad and dad being like, no, So this leads into the other story.
Yeah.
I'm a freshman in college. Dad is up for family weekend. And I say, hey, Dad, did you ever see a ghost in the house? And he said, I absolutely did.
Oh, man.
And I said, well, what happened? I said, so what happened? And he said, well, your mother and I were fighting. We hadn't divorced yet. And so I went down into the family room to go to sleep on the couch. And so I'm just drifting off. and I feel somebody sit down by my feet.
Oh man.
And and I say my mother's name. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to use
Yeah.
names. My mother's name. Uh, uh, let's just say Susan. That's not her name. Susan, I'm not in the mood. And I didn't feel Susan move. So I said, seriously, Susan, listen, this is what it is for tonight. And he woke up fully, sat up, and next to him was a woman who looked lots like my mother, but in an old, old, old nightgown.
Oh man. Oof.
Followed her through the living room, up the stairs, into the bedroom. The woman laid down beside my mother and disappeared into her.
Whoa. Oh man. I don't think I've ever heard of something like that happening. That is crazy. Did your mom ever have any type of like personality shift around this time or anything? Or was your mom was she aware of it or like
That I don't know. I mean, so it's interesting. So I don't have a relationship like that with my mom where I would
mm,
have those
yeah.
conversations. Um, but I did with my dad, So I I think I was just so flabbergasted that here this story had existed in our family for all this time.
Mm-hmm.
But you know thankfully, I'm in elementary school. We left, still with the divorce and stuff like that. We ended up in another house for my middle school years, and living with my mom. And it was like a story that was had disappeared until that moment, over a freaking apple pie dessert
Yeah.
on family weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Dad, you never told me. And he goes, I was about to tell you that.
I get
And
that. I get that.
right, like that's freaking deep, because that could be like proof of the fact that we do resurrect, we
Mm-hmm.
or we not resurrect, reincarnate, that
Yep.
we reincarnate. And so, was my mom astral projecting a version of herself, a historic version of herself,
Yeah.
because it looked like her, but it wasn't dressed at all in our
Mm-hmm.
time? And or was it somebody who was feeding on the fact that there was all of this, of course, tension?
Yeah, I've seen that happen plenty of times. So, like, just there's some. I always say with the spirit world, a lot of them they're humans that are passed on. So humans have good traits, bad traits. There's good people, bad people. Same thing in the spirit world. And people, there are people that feed off negativity. And I was like, there is entities that do that. And I've seen some of the chaos that happens when they're feeding off that. So I had to. This was back in the spring. I banished. It was like a pedophile Catholic preacher out of my grandfather's basement. That was like, he was causing a
Ugh.
bunch of stuff. And like, there was a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to get into the podcast happen with this dude, specifically with the fan. And it was just up under the rug. And then it just was like, that day was so chaotic and there was like physical fights happening. And I finally figured it out and was like, and we're done. Get me. And I was like, I got my witchcraft stuff out. And I was like, and you guys are seeing this side of me, and got it out. And it's like, that it makes you wonder what this stuff is sometimes. It's like, was that stuff feeding all this stuff? Or I was also thinking it could have been like something that was manifested out of it, like out of that she might have manifested like an egregore or something. So that's very interesting. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty wild. And I think my father's admission of that, first of all, that opened up, the opportunity. He then told me some other stories
Mm-hmm.
of things that had happened to him. Um and it was, the thing about having these conversations about the uncanny is that sometimes people will surprise you. You'll
Yes.
have in your head that they're very logical, or they're
Mm-hmm.
very, they're very stark in their belief systems. And then you say, hey, so this thing happened. And you talk about it like you talk about, anything else in your life. And suddenly you see a side of people that you're like, I had no idea that
Yeah.
that you have been moving through life carrying that story with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the potential belief or doubt or confusion that surrounds that. And I think, this is again one of those opportunities where we end up finding we have a lot more in common in what we don't understand
Yes.
than and that is a means to bring us together in um a deeper way,
Yeah,
right?
totally. And people have these experiences and it's so pushed to the edges of our society and like you can't talk about it. And there's also like there's a Christian egotism I find wrapped up in it in America, and they want to like explain it away or ration it or like, just rationalize it as something else. And it's like people have paranormal experiences and like we have to talk about them, and when you talk about them you really get to see a side of a person. Like my dad was opening up like a few months ago about some of the paranormal activity in his house, and he used to have him and my stepmom used to live in this house that like we've all had paranormal experiences. Like your story reminded me of one of my brother. He woke up and was getting ready for school. It was like 6:30 in the morning. He was going to high school and he saw this like random girl walk in the hallway, and he's kind of a ditz, like he's kind of a blonde, I always say. And he didn't even think anything of it and thought it was like my sister. But then he thought like, wait a minute, she doesn't have dark hair like that. And then it hit him in the middle of like English class at like 10:30 what he saw. And then of course he's coming to get me at lunchtime because I'm a grade younger than him to tell me about it. And I'm like, what? So that's what it reminded me of. But my dad just recently, when we were talking about that experience, he came out and said that he actually has had many experiences and that he does have a psychic ability. And I was like, where was this at like 10 years ago when all this crazy shit was happening at the house and you were trying to like explain it away like it was, the house like settling or something like that? And I'm like, we're all having these super intense experiences and it's like, oh, you were aware of it and you're psychic now. I'm like, okay, Dad, wow. And that explains where I get some of my ability from.
No, and I think, and you also hit on something that I think is really interesting. So, when we talk about some of my like ghost hunting experiences and things like that, I think one of the key things for me when I allow myself to do those things is that in the moment, you don't have it all figured out. And in fact,
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, your experience, it might take you until the next period
Yep.
to realize what you actually saw, and then you grab your little brother and tell the story,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of this stuff requires some time to process
Yeah.
because you know that something's odd, but you can't put your finger on it because maybe our instincts are to be logical or to be skeptical of it. And so like allowing things enough space to exist in and find their way to the wait a second, okay, this is something different, this is something other, this is something liminal, instead of just assuming that it's liminal, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's when the moments are particularly special.
Oh yeah, well when you paranormal investigate, like I always say, you're getting a puzzle together, you're getting the pieces put to you. You don't know what the finished product is, but you have to start especially when you start doing like an Estes method or using any type of like spirit box communication, you're getting little bits of it and you got to piece it all together. And like I had this realization when we filmed an investigation that played in the art gallery called A Theory Anarchy. And in it, I had my ex-fiance who died of a drug overdose years ago come through. And in that moment, I was feeling him coming through, but I wasn't fully piecing it together until it finally, like, I realized it. And you can see that moment. But then rewatching it, it's like, I'm like, whoa, he was coming through even before I realized it was him and stuff like that. And like, you need to have that hindsight, that like, kind of looking at it and being like, wait a minute, the spirit world was talking like this. It's one of those things with paranormal investigating I don't think people fully understand, of like in that moment you're not grasping it all.
Well, it's important to leave room,
Yes.
right? Don't to go into a space and make a bunch of assumptions and then be
Mm-hmm.
disappointed because this didn't happen or that didn't happen
And don't antagonize the
or
spirits
whatever.
either. Don't be Zach Baggins, I say.
They're well, here's the thing is they're people,
Yeah. Treat them
right?
ethically. Treat them like you would any other human.
Or and if they're not, you should still treat them ethically.
Yeah.
Just like we should treat the planet ethically and
Mm-hmm.
everything else
Oh,
ethically.
yeah.
Like, come on, this is not this is easy. This is the
Mm-hmm.
easy part of all of this.
And I always
So
say with paranormal investigating, it's a good exercise in boundaries because when it comes to some of these entities, you have to have your boundaries up. You're not following me home. You're not coming in my body. Like, keep your boundaries up and rigid because they have to be. And it translates into like when you deal with like interpersonal communication with like family members and stuff, having those boundaries in that experience, it works wonders.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So have you been on a paranormal investigation, like an actual, like real one? Like, do you paranormal investigate? So I feel like you're kind of witchy and spooky like me. Like I can tell we're clicking and you're my people. And I'm like, I know you've been on an investigation.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny. One of my former students, so I was a college professor for about 17 and a half years. And so one of my former students admitted that, because it's weird to say that word, but admitted to me without knowing my interest that he had been doing paranormal investigations since middle school with his history teacher and all of this kind of
Oh, I
stuff. And
love
like there
it.
was a small group of them, and I'm like, what a great history teacher. And he's like, oh, you're not freaked out, or you're not going to judge me. And so that's the other thing
Oh,
that's
yeah.
always interesting about this, especially in the realm of the academic,
Yes.
right?
The paranormal is the best
Mm,
storytelling device for history. I tell that to people all the time. It gets people engaged. It makes like a lot of these places, like in Maryland where I'm at, we will try to go get investigation. And a lot of the historical boards are like, oh no, we want to stay away from that. And I'm like, this will get more interest into it, which means more money to help your preservation efforts. Like you be open to the paranormal, like this house, this historic mansion, like there's a lot of ghosts, like, and there's a lot of inns in my hometown of Havre de Grace in Maryland. And I'm like, a lot of those places do not want the paranormal tourism. They're like, we want to keep the guests. And I'm like, people want to come here to stay in a haunted bed and breakfast. Like they want to experience this stuff.
yeah, we need it. We need that liminal. We need that enchantment. We need
Yes.
to know that there's something other than,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, the whole point of like the spiritualist movement. And oh, by the way, if anybody is in the Salem area right now at the Peabody Essex Museum, there's an amazing exhibit called Conjuring the Spirit that's all about spiritualism and spirit communication and
Oh,
stuff.
I love
So it's
it.
like an awesome, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a really beautifully curated exhibit. I can't sing its praises loud enough. But anyway, so yes, back to the investigation, right? So we did the orphanage in Gettysburg, one of
Oh
those,
yeah,
famous sort of
oh
things.
yes, oh yes.
Yeah,
Gettysburg is where
yeah.
I
And so
got my
we
start
so
in the paranormal. So it's an hour outside of
right,
Baltimore. I'm
it's
like, it's the best.
but you're there for just a couple of hours or
Hmm.
whatever, so not a lot happened there. But um then that same person, that same friend of mine, we went to to do a paranormal investigation as part of ParaCon at Pennhurst
Oh yeah.
State. Yeah, Pennhurst Asylum, which is not really
Mhm.
an asylum, you know what I mean? So, but that's how it's advertised. So I'm gonna, I'll use that nomenclature. Um, and so you go and there's I don't remember how many people, maybe there were
Well,
like a
two of the
hundred people, and
people
then
that
they
were
divide
there
you.
are Megan and Brix from the filming of Theory Anarchy. They met at Paracon at Pennhurst, so they were yeah. So I'm
Ah,
like, this is a cool little
adorable.
synchronicity. I love it.
It is a listen. It is a deep, deep place.
Oh, I've been there.
Like,
I
y-
was very uncomfortable investigating because the history of it, where there was intellectually disabled people that were horrendously abused and neglected, and people go in there and start doing like the antagonizing style of ghost hunting. I'm like, these people, like these, like leave them alone. And I'm like, there's doctors and nurses, ghosts that are there that protect them, that are actively trying to get people outside of the building, which I always find interesting. But I'm like, I go back and forth because I'm like, I don't. I don't know. That places like that. I'm like, let those spirits just be. Like they've been through enough.
No, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I also cut my teeth in the haunted attraction industry
Hmm.
with the haunts in that area, and I did some work for that on that property. So I already had kind of like this association with that
Hmm.
property itself, and I did work with Eastern State Penitentiary, so I have
Oh,
a
another fun
very, very
place.
sweet spot. Yeah, I have a sweet spot for stabilized ruins,
Yeah.
right? And the history
Hmm.
and all of that. But so we're in these paranormal groups, and like, so there's about 100 people there. We get divided into groups of 10. And, I honestly, I had some equipment with me and I just decided not to use any of it.
Hmm.
I decided just to kind of walk around and kind of experience. So, it was more about having my flashlight, feeling the vibe of the
Hmm.
place, just kind of doing it. And any chance I could, my friend and I, we like kind of broke off from the group because there were some people who were doing like really trying to do some honoring
Hmm.
kind of investigation. Then there were people who were less than honoring
Oh
of
yeah.
the space,
Yeah.
and so we were in one of the buildings, and I feel like it was Dilworth, but I'm not 100% sure. So this is where I'm not great.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not great with names. So my friend would remember exactly which
Was it the
building we were
building
in.
with the
But it was
cribs in it? Because that's the building I had some stuff happen.
uh
Because I'm bad with the building names too.
no,
Okay.
no, 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 definitely not, definitely not. So but we're in the building, and this was like I think the first time that they allowed people in this building,
Hmm.
right? So this would have been pre-COVID. Probably would have been 2019. All right, well, time.
I know we've
Anyway,
been in time warp, like Rocky Horror.
it's, it's so confusing. It's so confusing. So anyway, we're in this space. It's one of those long, 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 long hallways, right? And so the other investigators are down the left side of the hallway, like as you enter the building. The docent is in the middle, the ghost docent, as I like to call them.
Oh yeah.
The ghost docent is in the middle, and my friend and I head to the opposite far end. And at the far end of that building, the hallway makes a T. And that T then you right ahead is a solid wall, and then you can enter a big room, either to the right or the left, that goes in, that's kind of the terminus of that area, right? Well, my friend went into the big room, and I'm like, dude, I'm not feeling that room.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go in that room, right? So I'm at the end of this hallway at the junction. To my left is a one of those walls that's primarily the glass brick. Those
I know
the
exactly where you're talking about. Yes, that is. I know that room. There. Yeah. Okay. Oof.
and so I am taking my flashlight, and I am essentially tracing the wall with my flashlight where
Hmm.
all the fire scaling is,
Yeah.
right? Because there was a fire in that part. And so I'm looking at all the fire scaling, and I'm kind of looking at it in a clockwards motion, and I come down to center, and I shine my flashlight in front of me, and there I am in perfect silhouette. And I'm like, well, that's odd. So I look behind me, and there's no one behind me.
Whoa.
I look in
Wait.
front of me.
Oof. Ooh,
I
man.
look in front of me, and I am still there. And it's absolutely me. And so then I
Man.
take my flashlight and I shine it around to see how I might be bouncing light off of something, right? And I'm like, it's not doing any of this. And I put the flashlight down, and I'm still there. And then I hear the docent start to walk towards me. And I turn my flashlight to her, and she's like, oh, I just took the best picture of you from behind. You're in silhouette in your flashlight beam. And I'm like, did you use the flash? And she's like, no. And I'm like, has anybody else been down here? And she's like, no. And I'm like, wait, did you take a picture of me from behind, framed by my flashlight? Or did you take a picture of this? And I put my flashlight back down, and I'm not there.
Whoa.
And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, my silhouette was like, I was right there in shadow. And she's like, no. And I'm like, what the actual F just happened?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand this.
That's a wild one. That I don't even know how. I don't. Oof. Because there's like also like the doppelganger aspect where it was your silhouette, but there's that's an interesting one. That building, now that I remember it, like that, yeah, there's definitely like weird portals in that building. And I remember that it was a T, and then it's like that big room. I just remember going in there and just like something happened in that room that has a lot of like residue in there, and I was like, I'm good. Like, it was just
I
very
didn't want to
heavy.
go in there.
Yeah.
But then what's so interesting is, so then my friend comes out of that room and he's like, Alisa, what just happened? I'm like, I honestly don't know.
Wow.
And so I explained it to him. And so then we went back, and we were staying overnight because we wanted to do the thing the next morning. And so I'm like, hey, do me a favor, stand behind me with your flashlight. I remember how tall I was in a thing. Someone would have had to been behind me, 5 feet behind me, in order for me to cast the shadow that was in front of me. 5 feet behind me. There was no one behind me.
Wow.
So needless to say, I the next day I found, the managers of the property, and I said, hey, listen, so here's the thing. This is what happened. I don't know what it was. Have you had anybody else having an experience like that? And they're like, no, we haven't had anybody have an experience like that. And then they're like, you just said that all very calmly. And I'm like, well, in the moment, this is again, right? Mm-hmm. In the moment, I was just like, what is this? This doesn't make sense. Not that I'm brilliant with lighting, but I do understand the physics of lighting to at least some degree.
Yeah.
And I was like, none of this was making sense. And so I was like, just kind of going through all the potential things it could have been. And it just didn't follow. And they're like, hey, you want to be a ghost docent? And I'm like, sure, let me see if I can. And at the time, like, the tours were like, you meet at 7:00 at night and then you're done at like 3 a.m. Like, it was rough. Like, it was,
it's a long night.
But it's a long night. But I'm like, yeah, let me give it a try. The reason I tell you this is because then 2 weeks later, I go and I'm shadowing one of the ghost docents. And, we're going into the buildings, and I'm just kind of like taking it all in. Everybody is like, our group is ready to move to a new building, but the other group isn't ready yet. So we're all out on the catwalk in front of the Mayflower building. They're all looking at their devices or scrolling through pictures or whatever. I'm the only one looking ahead. And there, across that catwalk that runs perpendicular from like Philadelphia, to towards admin.
Yeah.
5 paces, I saw a shadow figure, tall with a short brimmed cap, run 5 paces across that catwalk and disappear just behind one of the trees.
Yep.
Right? That kind of blocks. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with kind of the layout of this, this property has all these catwalks that adjoin all these buildings, and the catwalk that is perpendicular that kind of leads towards the main catwalk that goes in front of the admin building. There are stairs that lead down into these grassy courtyards. So my immediate response is, somebody's on this campus.
Yeah.
So I charge ahead and I go to the stairs that lead down into to that kind of grassy courtyard, assuming that the person I saw was somebody who broke onto the campus, ran, then dipped down there, because that's about where the shadow that's where the tree kind of created a natural barrier.
Yeah.
And so someone could have gone down there. So I reached the top of the stairs, and at that same point, a golf course is coming up with the managers of the property, with some of their VIP folks. And I'm like, did you just see that guy run down here? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I think somebody's on your campus.
Yeah.
So they like, what time was it? And I told him between, like, I knew, I had looked at the watch right when it happened. And I said, it would have been between, 10:05 and 10:15, absolutely. I said, because I looked right after, and I think it was about 10:07 when I looked at my watch right after it happened. They checked the security camera and there was nothing.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. That's yeah, because I've had experiences in places like that where it's so real. You're like, someone is in this building, and it's like less of the paranormal fear comes up and the fear of like, oh, we have an intruder that might, that's a human that might, like, I've been on that, and that gets scary too. But I love those old asylums. I know we featured in the paranormal realm Forest Haven, which is pretty much like the Pennhurst or like any of the other asylums, but in Maryland, but it's completely abandoned. Like it's like you have to sneak on there. Like that's one of the, I want to go there so badly, but I'm not risking a felony of trespassing to go there. But like these places are so like infested with paranormal activity that it's you just walk on the campus, you can feel it. And the best paranormal like catching tool is your body. Like that's the, like you can have a spirit box, you can have a REM pod, all that stuff, but I'm like, your body is what's going to, and it's always when you least expect it. Like you're just walking there and you see the shadow figure. God, I love it.
Well, and can I tell you how pissed off everybody who was looking at their devices
Oh, I'm sure they
because,
were.
Because they because I was the only one who saw it.
Yeah.
Because everyone was fixated
Yes.
on their toys.
Yes.
You know, and not that like I don't mean to demean. I don't please like that's not my intention to demean anybody using technology to try to determine these things. I mean, hell, you know, some of the best inventions, you know, TV, radio, all of this was created first as a means to potentially talk to spirits.
Yes.
So like this stuff matters, right? It's like that's the other part of all of this that I love is you know spiritualism and spirits are the mother of invention.
Yes.
Which I love that.
Yes.
Like how sexy is that?
I love it.
So yeah, like the fact that I had two really striking experiences in the same location honestly still floors me because like what does that mean for me?
Well, I always say you're open to it. You can, because a lot of people are shut off to the paranormal, and a lot of them like they're just not open. Like I have my other stepbrother, he's completely shut off to it, and stuff happens, and it's like it just doesn't sink in. Whereas people like us, we're open to it, we experience it, we accept it, and the spirit world knows that. And I always feel like they kind of they're more willing to kind of show themselves because they're like, oh hey, this is cool, and also they know when the right moments are happening. Like, oh, everyone's on their phone, I'm going to show myself to this one person and I know no one else is going to see it. Because they also, they kind of like to troll, I always say. They have a sense of humor. They're going to have fun with you. And oh, yeah, I love that. I love that. So you were talking about TV shows. Do you have any like paranormal reality television shows that you watch at all? Or because I study reality television. Most of my little darlings, I either am talking about paranormal reality television or like Real Housewives. So I'm like, do you watch any, do you watch Ghost Adventures?
I watch, honestly, I watch all of them.
I do too.
I watch all of them. And you know, part of it, okay, so, you know, so I'm interested in folklore. I'm interested in urban legends. I'm interested in legend tripping.
Yeah.
So one of the ways, you know, so legend tripping in its very nature, so folks that are familiar with legend tripping, is basically there's the old guy in the woods that if you knock on his door 3 times, you know, this magical weird thing happens, right? That's legend tripping. But most of the people who engage in legend tripping, it's a rite of passage. It's part of your kind of staking your claim into early adulthood, of being fearless, of testing boundaries, of going on adventures with your friends, right? So
and that goes back into like indigenous culture. I love that. I freaking love that.
So legend tripping is one of these things that is often considered, you know, an adolescent puberty kind of aspect of growing up, right? And except that every one of these ghost programs is legend tripping for adults, right? It's all, here's the history, here's what I expect to happen. So I'm going to ask these questions. I'm going to perform this ritual, or I'm going to go on this particular night. And you're asking for this experience, this legend, this folklore to manifest, right?
Yeah.
And so I love all of those programs because I love how some people approach this kind of legend tripping as a means um, to lift their belief system and support their belief system in evil and good and or whatever, or that some people are using it in a scientific way and some people are using it as a commodity.
Yep.
Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like
I can't tell you how.
pretend that
Yeah.
this isn't.
There's a capitalistic
Yeah, the
nature that goes
commodification.
into it, and it's like they want to make money. But I always tell people, us humans don't own the spirit world. We can't control them. They will do whatever they want. And like, I think the closest thing you can get to that is probably having it on television, but then also it's kind of reversing itself, but we've kind of gotten to a point with paranormal reality television where they feature and focus on very unethical styles of paranormal investigating. And sadly, people are mimicking these people, and that's how they think it should be. There was an episode of Kindred Spirits, which is one of my favorites, because I always say gays ghost hunt better, and Adam Berry just like, he does it. And so does Chip Coffey. And there was one where they had a team go in.
I love Chip Coffey.
He's the best. He's the freaking best. Him with his Alexander McQueen scarf. He's like the best. And but they went into this house that was having like activity, and a few years ago they brought in another paranormal investigating team who antagonized the spirit. It ended up being this like 96-year-old woman who lived in the house all her life, and she just was still there. And then it's like, look at what you're doing. Like, that's it. And I liked it because they rectified what has been on paranormal reality television for years of this, like, come at me, bro. Like, what do you, like, that type of energy. And it's like, that's not cool. Like, that's not what we should be doing when it comes to the paranormal.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that's part of the reason why I love to watch all the programming, because it's also really important to get all the perspectives of how people approach this stuff so that you can choose to be more ethical, and so that you can surround yourself with a more ethical community, and also so you can encourage people to be more ethical, but not from a place of not seeing what other people are doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about any of this as someone who hasn't seen that as a personal practice done that way, right? Or as a commodification of a practice, because here's the other thing that kind of, it goes back, it actually dovetails nicely with the beginning of this conversation. The shows that basically build in fear as a way of commodification.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, preach.
And so we as a people have the power to eliminate that fear so that we can have these meaningful conversations, so that we can exist in a realm where things may not be able to be explained. And we can do so without making someone bad or making something evil, or building up like all the monies that come with fear.
Yep. Because that's what it's been. It's like, we got to go to this serial killer house and we want to antagonize it. And it's like, like most of the ghosts I deal with, like, I refuse to deal with anything dark. I want my ghosts to be fun, happy spirits. We have fun, we chill, we play around, like, because that's what it should be. And it's like that. It doesn't have to be dark and scary, because in all my years of investigating, I've never come across a demon. Like, they exist. Yes, I'm not saying that they don't exist, but they're so much more rarer than what reality television makes them out to be. And not everything is that. It's like, like, I don't know. I could go on for days about it, because it's the same thing. You shouldn't commodify the fear, and you shouldn't I know you shouldn't prop up on like any of that unethicalness and any of that fear stuff. It's not what is conducive for good paranormal investigating and just good indulging of this folklore and stuff like that. So,
Well, and it makes me think about like, so we say that sex sells, right?
mm-hmm.
Do you know
Fear.
what sells? Fear.
Yep. Yep.
Because any of the sex
Mhm.
that sells, there's also a sense of the taboo and the fear and the
Oh yeah. We're
everything
gonna
else
get
that comes
caught.
along
Oh
with it.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So like the fear
And
feels
not to
like
get
it's actually
political,
truly at the
but
core of it all.
there's been a shift in political theater for more reality show theatrics, and the reality theatric of fear is very present in today's media. And I don't know. See, that's what I love having these conversations, because there's such like a intellectual aspect to this stuff. And there's that I don't think people are picking up on. And there actually is a useful thing for all this paranormal pop culture that we take in. It's like, like I don't fear the spirit world. I don't fear death. I don't fear any of that anymore. And it's like, like I welcome it. And it's like, I have haunted objects in my house, and all the ghosts are cool and they're my friends. And it's like, like the old art exhibition. Like I had Jeremiah from the State Theater in Havre de Grace. I had his painting there that he's attached to. He was in here. I had Haunted Doll. It's like all the fun spirits that I love. I'm like, I feel like I was like, coming to see my friends when I come into work. So that's the fun part, where it's like, there's nothing to fear. Like, I love it. All right. So wrapping up. So this was a coffee break. So when you go to like Dunkin', Starbucks, or your independent coffee house, always go independent. They're always the best. What drink do you get? What is your order?
Well, and it's funny that you said about the independent coffee house, because I am now officially in the land of Dunkin', and I haven't
Yeah.
stepped foot in a Dunkin'.
I'm about to say,
Independent coffee houses.
Yeah. I love it.
So I love an independent coffee house. And so usually what I do is I try to read their board first to see if they have something kind of truly unique. But if they don't, like, kind of my standard is I'm pretty basic, I like an oat milk vanilla latte, I'm pretty standard. But like when it is cider season,
True.
to get a cider and then have a little bit of oat milk and a little bit of like cinnamon and nutmeg put on top.
Ooh.
It's just like, but the little oat milk makes it creamy.
Yeah.
Little latte.
Oh,
that's delicious.
That sounds amazing.
So yeah. I'm pretty, I'm a pretty basic person, but lactose.
They're oldies but goodies, I always say. Like, there's nothing like just a regular latte, just like, or like a regular mocha latte. It's like there's something about the basics that are good, because I feel people get so caught up in like we got to have all this extra stuff, and I'm like, the basics are good too. So, all right,
basics are good.
Yes.
So yeah.
So where can we find you? Where can we find your work? Where can we buy it? I have a lot of drag queens that are into like spooky costumes and stuff like that, and I'm like, where can we go to support you? So.
Oh, thank you. That's really great. Okay, so there's a couple of different places. Probably one of the best places is my leather mask webpage, and that is www.scared-of-my-shadow. So scared of my shadow with dashes in between. On Instagram, which is an excellent way to follow me, is Scared of My Shadow Art, all one word. But you can also find the work I do as a puppet builder, a costume maker, a sculptor, all that other kind of stuff at www.alisa-sickora-kleckner.com. Those are great ways to kind of connect with me. And info at Scared of My Shadow Art is where you can also send me if you're like, hey, crazy person, want to work on some crazy thing, and I'll probably be like, that's not crazy. I'm in.
You're like, we'll make it. I'll put links in the episode description of where to find all the amazing artwork. This has been such a great coffee break. So, all right, beaming back up to the UFO. Peace out, guys.